The first bird of prey that I ever got to work closely with was named Journey. Now Journey, her name was no accident, although she had a terrible one. Journey survived a collision with a moving train. Now, that collision, obviously, there's going to be some severe injuries that go with that, and primarily it was head trauma. So working with Journey was an extraordinary experience. There was another rehabilitator that did the healing work with her, and then she was transferred to us to see if she would be able to be released back into the wild. So for 18 months, we worked with Journey to try and achieve that goal. But that has to start somewhere. So when Journey came to us first, we started training her just like we would any falconry bird. So it starts with a process called manning. Now manning requires the patience of potty training a toddler, because what you're doing is you're allowing this bird to sit very close to you and get used to you being in a close proximity. They're not normally like that. So we started out with Journey that way. Now the first thing we noticed right off the bat is that Journey didn't mind it. She wasn't acting like a hawk would who's sitting in a living room watching TV with a couple of people standing there. That's not what hawks do. But Journey didn't seem to mind it. So we knew that there wasn't something quite right with her, and not that there was, she had healed from her wounds, but there were some internal things, especially that brain injury that was giving her some grief. And so there's some things that I learned from Journey that humans can benefit from. The first one I'm going to tell you about today is one of the first things that I learned from Journey is to see the world through her eyes, to be able to see what she sees from a human perspective. All right, and that's really what I want to impart on you today as we go through Journey's story. So again, we started out training Journey that way, and we noticed that there wasn't something quite right. So we set her goals very small. Her first goals were to just jump to a glove from a perch for just little tidbits of meat. That just gets her started with knowing that that glove is now a source of food. She starts to trust us. All right, and she knew that something wasn't quite right. She would fly, but she wasn't able to stick her landing. She had some struggles. Sometimes she would just outright crash. And, for a hawk, that's a little bit embarrassing. But she did struggle a little bit of that in that arena. So once we got that going, we decided to fly her on some little bit longer tethered flights. And before long, she struggled. She just couldn't quite get it. So we just kept up. Nevertheless, she persevered. She stuck with us, and we worked with her, like I said, for 18 months. And now all the way up through her experience, this bird worked very hard. We gave her some live prey tests. She passed them all with flying colors. Like one day a light switch flipped, and she started doing well. She started sticking those landings. She started being able to do the things that hawks do. Now again, like I said, I learned a lot from this bird. Seeing the world through her eyes showed me some things that I just wasn't aware of that are deadly in the world of birds of prey. Anything with a human interaction, some conflict could be with power lines, car strikes, rat poison, in Journey's case, a train strike. It was a pretty significant injury to her. We also see birds with gunshot wounds. There are several things that happen to these birds through their time with us, and we try to help them and get them back on their feet. Journey just happened to be the first. Now, interestingly enough, when we first got Journey, we were approached about becoming wildlife rehabbers. We were only falconers at the time, so this was not something that we had really even considered. But after going through some of the experiences that we had with Journey, we thought, well, how could we not do this? So after a lot of blood, sweat, and tears with this bird, on May 23rd, 2021, she took one of her first free flights into the wild, right down the road from here exactly. It was an amazing experience. It's something that I'll never forget. And Journey, like I said, was the first bird that I worked closely with, and I will always remember her for that. So this was Journey's release day. We opened the door. It took her a few minutes, but once she got out, she was gone. And we were we were sad, but we were happy to see her go. Now think about this. This is a bird that lived with humans for 2 years to try to relearn how to do things that a hawk does instinctually out of the nest. And she was able to come back from that injury and go on back out into the wild and do fun hawk things like she was supposed to.
Doesn't usually take this long, Journey. There's my baby. Oh.
Every time I see that, even though I made the video, it makes me tear up. But it was so great to see Journey go back to the wild because it felt like we had accomplished something. But what really happened was Journey was transforming us. Every bird that we work with does a little bit, leaves a little bit of something with us. It has an indelible impact on us. And here we are 164 avian patients later, after we became rehabilitators. I can't imagine our lives without it. My wife and I made the commitment, even though we're very busy and have full-time jobs aside from what we do now, we also take care of these birds, and it's absolutely extraordinary. I wouldn't change it for the world. So the next one I'm going to tell you about, this bird had a very big impact on me for a reason that it was such an amazing learning experience. But I'm going to tell you about Scarlet. So Scarlet's Story started just like any Saturday matinee family movie. It was picture perfect. So picture this. A little 6-year-old girl and her mom go for a walk on their farm. And they come across a hawk that's tangled in barbed wire hanging by her wing. Interestingly enough, that 6-year-old little girl had been to one of our education programs a couple of weeks prior at a summer camp. And so when they found the bird, she knew exactly what to do. She told her mom, call the bird people. They help birds. Call the bird people. So they did. They got a hold of us. I went down to where they were and picked up Scarlet. Now the little girl named her because when we told her that it was a red-tailed hawk, she said, well, her name should be Scarlet. And we agreed. So Scarlet, her injuries really weren't that bad. Now you think about it, being hung in a barbed wire fence is not something that you easily recover from. So it took her about 3 weeks. She had a little bit of muscle damage to her wing. She had some feather damage. She was very dehydrated. She was obviously hungry. She had been going after prey when she got hung in the fence. Now her recovery, her journey, was not really what was inspiring. What happened at her release event, which we like to call Freedom Days, is what inspired me. So now 3 weeks after we have Scarlet, we go back out to the farm. We contacted the family. They said, sure, come on down. We'd love to meet you out there and see it. We said, please make sure you bring the girls who found her. We would love for them to see this event up close and personal. We did. We got down there. We got our cameras set up. I mean, and you have to picture this. It was a beautiful setting. You have this barn on a giant farm. There's huge trees to perch in. There's all this open land for hawks to hunt. It was literally a hawk's paradise. Even the little girl's dad told me, he said, I see red-tailed hawks out here all the time. So we thought, well, this would be great. We're releasing her not even 100 yards from where she was found. So this is fantastic. This was perfect. So we get to the release, and Scarlet came out, and she put on a show. She comes out, she twirls, she shows us that her wings are healed, and then she takes off into the wild blue. And it was fantastic. Now, all of our releases are spiritually uplifting. They're emotionally uplifting. There's just really no feeling like it. And this one was special for several reasons. The first reason was, obviously, this little girl had been to one of our programs and seen that we help birds. And so she and her family cut that bird out of the fence. And I still have the piece of barbed wire that was removed from her wing. It's about a 6-inch piece, and it was pretty significant. The second part of this, though, is that the setting just could not have been better. Everything about that. The family was right there next to it. When Scarlet hopped out of that box, it was absolutely perfect. But it's what happened after our camera stopped rolling that was extraordinary. So while we were packing our things up and we were talking and joking with the family there, 2 huge mature red-tailed hawks come screaming out of the blue into the same tree that Scarlet just landed in. And so my wife and I look at each other in horror, thinking, we're getting ready to have this little girl have a front row seat to the circle of life. Because hawks are territorial, and we just thought, this is a hawk's paradise. It's a great place to release it. We didn't think, well, there may be other hawks here too. Interestingly enough, though, they came screaming in. All these birds are calling, and we were just kind of just waiting for nature to show us her violent side. And amazingly enough, those 3 birds started calling to each other and then flew off together. And we have never seen that in all the releases that we have ever done. It never happened. So the first thing that happened was we were relieved that we did not have to explain the circle of life to this poor little girl who just rescued this hawk. But the thing that it really changed in our minds, really transformed the way that we think about the relationships that those birds have, is that we believe that those 2 red-tailed hawks were actually her parents. See, Scarlet was a first-year bird. She was less than a year old. And so when she came back out there, because they mate for life, they protect their territory, they already have a very strong family bond, but we never thought that bond would extend past leaving the nest. The parents, sure, will be together, but as the young move out, kind of like with humans, as the young move out, they start to form their own lives. They get their own territories. So this was an extraordinary event for us, and it was very touching to me because it really changed the way that I view how these relationships are between these animals. It was absolutely extraordinary. So what I'd like to do now is I'm going to introduce you to a feathered friend. The first thing you learn in falconry is how to tie a knot one-handed. All right, buddy. Here we go. Okay. Never fails. Never fails. Stage fright, we'll call that. So I would like to introduce you to Hubcap. Hubcap is a male barred owl, and he was hit by a car not once but twice. And so he, like Journey, also has a traumatic head injury. He's a little delayed, and so for right now, he is learning the falconry side of things. We're manning him on a glove to see if he will make a good education ambassador, and we're really hopeful that he has a potential to be released with a healing journey, kind of like Journey had. Again, I told you her name was no accident. So when I was a kid, I craved nature. I couldn't get enough of it. My grandmother, who had a big hand in raising me, knew that. So we never missed a National Geographic special. When it was on TV, we were watching it. One of the other things that she did for me that I still do to this day is she used to buy me the large coffee table books. And I have several of them, and my three favorites were anything to do with the undersea world, world geology, and the kingdom of animals. But back then, just looking through those books, I mean, I wore those pages out. I read those books thin. And I would never have thought as a kid that I would ever have the extraordinary opportunity to work with these amazing animals. But here we are. So back then it was just a flight of fancy. It was just something cool that when I got to go to Grandma's house, I got to look at these books that I love so much. And look at these animals and the rocks and the fish. All those things in those books that I absolutely loved. Now as an adult, if you would have told me that I would be working with any animals in any kind of wildlife rehab capacity, I would have called you crazy, because I work a full-time job. My wife works a full-time job. We are incredibly busy people with a lot of hobbies. When are we going to have time to take care of animals? Well, we made the commitment and we decided to take the time, and it has been one of the most rewarding things for my family. And there's a quote by Jane Goodall that's up on the wall here that says that, of course I can't remember it. Yes, I know. You want to go read it too, don't you? It says it would be an absolute waste, or it would be absolutely useless to help wildlife without first training the next generation of conservationists. So when we get to go to a school or go to a group similar to this and get to give people an up-close experience with a bird of prey that you only see in a book like I did as a kid, or that you've maybe seen on a power line when you're on a family trip going out into the country, that's why we do it. We love to be able to give back. And when I get to look out across that crowd, which I can't right now because of these lights, but when I get to look out across that crowd and see that spark in someone's eyes and see, you know what? Maybe one day I could do that. That's what makes it all worth it. And what I see, when I see those people out there, when they have that look on their face, they begin to see the world through the eyes of a hawk. And that's the only thing that I can ask for. Thank you very much.